Good evening. We'll call this urban renewal meeting to order. Could I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Dennehy?
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez? Absent. Commissioner Grantham?
Here.
Commissioner Jaquez? Absent. Commissioner Hamrick?
Here.
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
Commissioner Reeser?
Here.
Commissioner Smisher?
Here.
Commissioner A. Smith?
Here.
Commissioner B. Smith?
Here.
Chairman Payne.
Here? Excuse me. Could you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? We move to citizens requesting to speak to the Urban Renewal Authority. Don't believe we have anybody tonight, but we make that offer out there. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Item A is approve the minutes from October 6th, 2021 and November 3rd, 2021. Any kind of discussion?
Mr. Commissioner, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay,
Second.
we have a second. And we can approve both of them at the same time, is that correct? Okay. Wasn't much on November 3rd, you know, it was pretty action-packed. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Oh, roll call, please. Sorry, I have to remember what kind of meeting I'm in.
Commissioner Dennehy?
Here. Aye. God. Here we go again.
Commissioner
Did it twice,
Grantham?
man.
Aye.
Commissioner Hamrick?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Reeser?
Aye.
Commissioner Smisher?
Aye.
Commissioner A. Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner B. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Payne.
Aye. Thank you. Move on to financial report.
Okay, as of the beginning of October, the balance was $309,269.67. We had a deposit of $32,324 on the 7th of October. There was a journal entry to correct an entry to Ricker Cunningham that was actually a deposit, $4,800. We bought a stamp for $28.89. October ending balance was $336,764.78, which was also the beginning and ending balance for November.
Okay, any questions and/or comments to the treasurer? Okay, seeing none, entertain a motion to accept the financial statement, or financial report, excuse me.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the financial report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Dennehy?
Yes.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Commissioner Hamrick?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Reeser?
Aye.
Commissioner Smisher?
Aye.
Commissioner A. Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner B. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Payne.
Aye. Move on to the executive director's report. Ryan?
First, I just want to recognize that you all are in rare form tonight. For the executive director's reports, one thing that need to discuss and get direction from the commission is in relation to attorney fees. Up until this point, the attorneys have been working under the city's contract, which does not include doing work for our Urban Renewal Authority, so we need to separate that. And the fees for the attorneys to continue on with the Urban Renewal Authority is a discounted rate of $250 per hour, and we would use them on an hourly basis as needed for any urban renewal activities. So if that is okay with the board, we can bring forward an agreement next year.
No, I'm jumping the gun just a bit. That'll be reflected in next year's budget.
Yeah, we have a line item for professional services in the budget.
Okay. Any further discussion?
So,
Ma'am?
Thank you, Chairman Payne. May I ask, I'm not as familiar yet with our city's attorneys and their areas of expertise as I would like to be. Do they work on a lot of urban renewal authorities
Yes.
in other areas?
yes, recognized experts.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. Do we need a vote on this, or we just
No,
kind
I
of just
need to
say?
make sure I've got direction, and I
Right.
believe I do here, so.
I believe it's the right thing to do.
Okay. From, addition to the executive director's report, just to update, obviously, many council members sit on this board, but for those who are not council members, the rezoning of the Abbey property was approved on Monday night, so that project will move on to its next phase, which is looking at subdivision and engineering and construction diagrams and things like that. So as that project continues to move forward, I do believe that there will be many opportunities for urban renewal and using the tax increment financing that may be available. So we expect to see that moving forward. We're also seeing some commercial applications coming in for 4 Mile Ranch between Highway 50 and County Road 123. So we will also be expecting some potential urban renewal activities or requests coming from that future development as well. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the executive director and/or comments? Okay. That it, Ryan?
Yes, sir.
All right. Next, we'll move on to a public hearing for the budget hearing. Before I open it up for public comment, we will turn this over to, I assume, Ryan, you'll talk about the budget? Okay.
Yes, sir. So our finance director sends her regrets for not being able to be here. She is dealing with a family matter at the moment. So we have provided the budget for 2022. It was made available for public comment and inspection. At this time, we have no public comments. The budget anticipates revenue of $150,000 and the use of $76,500 of reserves to cover anticipated expenditures of $226,500. When putting together the budget, we included the grant programs that we had and included this year for life safety improvements as well as the facade improvements. That program continues along. The revenues that you'll see in the budget are from tax increments, both sales tax and property tax. And let's see, what else do we have here? We do have an increase in operating expenses. Those professional services that I mentioned earlier are built in at $10,000, as well as the cost share for staff time. The city did complete a salary study earlier this year, and there were some salary adjustments because of that, and the staff share costs per hour was updated accordingly.
Okay, any questions on the budget? Amy?
Just one question. I noticed on the facade grant program that only 4,000 of the projected 50,000 is estimated to have been spent. Do we have a lot of requests for that program moving into 2022, or a lot of anticipated requests?
We don't get a lot of requests for that program. And we've talked about reducing that to some extent because we just don't get the requests. It needs to be promoted more. We do need to promote it more. I know there will be a couple coming, for sure. But we generally don't get a lot of requests. The life safety grant is the bigger one that people are more interested in when they're coming across a need for sprinkler systems or something like that. We also had a grant opportunity, at least we thought we had a grant opportunity through the state to generate a lot of facade work and that failed. So people that were looking at that are now trying to figure out if the facade grant will help them. It's a small grant, and some of these improvements are pretty big, so it may not have the impact that they would like, but definitely something that people still ask about.
We are also currently hiring for a Main Street program manager, so as Mr. Harmon recognized, there's an education component in making sure businesses and building owners know that this program's available. And as we put somebody into that position, I expect that we'll see more applications and more interest in the program.
Okay, any other questions or comments? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ryan, what's the basis for the 150,000 in tax increment income? Is that just, where did that number come from, I guess?
So that's estimated based off of sales tax increment. That's what we're expecting to see from in additional sales tax from the urban renewal activities.
So that would be from projects that we have already approved.
So the way it is calculated is it's calculated based off of the increase in sales tax throughout the entire district. It is so the previous year is the base year, and then so you have your base year. You increase it on an annual basis based off of CPI, and we have within the urban renewal agreement between the Urban Renewal Authority and the city, we have a basis in there to recognize consumer price index, and anything above that base then would go to the sales tax increment. So it's not necessarily just urban renewal projects. If there are new businesses that are not an urban renewal project, for instance, a Natural Grocers comes into town and is generating net new sales tax into the district, a percentage of that will end up going to that sales tax increment.
And it is a percentage. It's not anything over and above a set amount or something like that. It is a percentage.
So it's so you have the base rates, and then you have the city has the 1% for 2A streets, which is not eligible, and then we have the 2% normal sales tax. Increment generated for 50% of that over and above the base rates, plus the CPI is what gets calculated to go into that fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, at this time, I will open the public hearing for public comments on the proposed budget. Seeing that we don't have a big rush for that, I will close the public hearing. Okay. Any further comments or questions? I will entertain a motion to approve the 2022 budget.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the 2022 budget.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Dennehy?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Commissioner Hamrick?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Reeser?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmisher?
Aye.
Commissioner A. Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner B. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Payne.
Aye. Thank you, Ryan, for that. Move on to item 9, redevelopment agreement for FB Auto Properties LLC, which is commonly known as Pharisee Ford. Who's going to take this, Rick or
We'll
Ryan?
hand this over to Rick Harmon.
Okay, Rick,
I'll take this.
you're
one.
up.
All right, we are talking today about Pharisee Boys Ford on East Highway 50, Fremont Drive. This is technically an East 50 East Access redevelopment project. That's really how we view this from an urban renewal perspective. It's a project that is being led by Ben Pharisee, who's here tonight if you have any questions of him. So we will go through a little PowerPoint, and then I'll give you some background on the project and let you ask any questions you have. So the project scope was to demolish existing blighted multi-building auto dealership. There were 4, I believe, buildings on that site. Ben can clarify that for us. And then consolidate multiple commercial and residential lots into one contiguous commercial zoned property, and then develop a new state-of-the-art auto dealership that's more community appealing and attractive and offers a modern sales environment to generate additional sales in our community. This is a picture and an overlay of the site as it was for many, many years. You've got the main dealership on the left, and then subsequent buildings in the back and on the right, and then the layout of the lot as you can see it from above, down in the corner. What we are seeing now is we are eliminating all of those buildings that you see on the left. So the before picture has all of the lots. You've got the lot up where it says before is not part of it. So the 3 lots that are to the south of that, the south and west of that area are all being consolidated into one. And then on the right, you've got a new picture of a layout of that property. So much more modern, much more efficient use of space for dealerships, for cars, I should say, people getting in and out. Nice thing about it too, there's a before and after, projected after. Nice thing about it too is that it takes into consideration the East Highway 50 access plan. Provided that is approved by council, that will effectively eliminate Fremont Drive. And when Ben came to us with this project, our engineering department asked him about this, and they included in their plan a plan for eliminating those access. You see those blue crosses right there on their property. Once Fremont Drive goes away, those blue access points also go away. And here you see in the plans, plan for removing that access once Fremont Drive is gone. Then they also have parking spaces out along that Fremont Drive, what was Fremont Drive at one point, for more access to vehicles and sales. So capacity for sales is improved immensely by this project. The benefits that the city gets out of it and the C-Care gets out of it: blight remediation of East Commercial Gateway into Canyon City, general neighborhood upgrade, and that brings in that terminology, external obsolescence, that we heard at one point. The neighborhood is not, it's blighted. It's very clearly blighted. My first conversation with Ben, I made a comment about blight and not wanting to offend him. He said, "Have you ever been in this building?" He said it's a blighted building, and the neighborhood is a blighted neighborhood. Stimulate additional commercial revitalization and business investment along the corridor. Success breeds success. And if we can generate more investment into an area of the community, it shows more investment into the area of the communities to investors, and it shows a commitment on the part of the community to assist with incentives. A plan that already coordinates with the likely eventual removal of Fremont Drive, and then upgrading and replacement of aging public infrastructure on and adjacent to the site. As far as the gap and the need is concerned, and this we talked about in the last meeting, the gap was identified by Ricker Cunningham as being approximately about $900,000, and they estimated a 12-year payback on that $900,000. They did not, in their analysis, include sales tax. We did an analysis of the eligible costs, and I verified this with Ben, and this was all acceptable. And then, as you can see on the bottom, we added a COVID-19 increase, basically, because the cost of construction for everything is skyrocketing. And that takes us to an agreed-upon amount of $1 million. We went with a 15-year payback instead of a 12-year payback in order to, I guess, work out the length of it. However, since we are also including sales tax in this, it's very likely that, given property tax and sales tax increment, this would be paid off prior to 15 years. And that's 15 years. You'll notice the documentation says, I think, 2036 37 or 36, I don't recall offhand. And that's 15 years of increment generated that leads to 15 years of payback. The challenge you have, and this is across the board with urban renewal authorities, if you do a 15-year payback from today, the increment doesn't get there, doesn't get into the account for a while. So you end up maybe the 14 or 13-year payback. So we extended it out to get 15 years payback. And that's where we stand right now. And like I said, Ben is here to answer any questions you might have. And I'll turn it over to you.
One question I have, since there's three of us not on council, is this East Highway project plan, and I heard you say that council has to approve that. Do they have to approve that before we do this with Pharisee? And I'm sure CDOT's involved with this. So,
So
can you enlighten us
Yeah.
without spending an hour doing it?
Sure. In 2018, there was a study looking at the east access control of Highway 50, basically from 15th Street to the Abbey. And there was a lot of public meetings, and this was a CDOT-funded project. The resulting document was an access control plan, which CDOT has adopted. It went to council for a vote. The vote was denied. So at some point, we have to revisit that with CDOT. We can approve this without, that plan being in place, because the future planning that Pharisee has done here takes that plan into account if and when it goes into effect. But these plans are not contingent upon it going into effect.
Not at all.
Okay, I guess that's where I was headed with this, is one's not mutual, okay. All right.
And something that is important to councilor was, to the council that voted down that Highway 50 plan, is this project here does not trigger that plan either. And so that's also a good thing.
Okay. Any
And
other
one more
questions?
point to add here, too. You notice that the list of eligible expenses that you've got. And there's another side of it being the Ricker-Cunningham analysis. That looks at it from another perspective. Ricker-Cunningham looks at it from, will the business generate the tax increment to support the eligible expenses? So you want to make sure that you're not funding eligible expenses way beyond what the tax increment will generate. So ironically, with the ones we've been looking at, they all seem to line up pretty closely with the increment anticipated. And this one lined up very closely with the increment anticipated. So,
But as in other projects, it depends on what the assessor actually
correct,
values it, whether or not, how much that kicks in.
correct,
Because if it comes in short, then it's up to the developer,
right.
not this board.
There is no tax increment
Right.
reimbursement without the tax.
I know I sound like a
increment.
broken record, I bring that
Yeah.
up like every time, but it's an important point.
Yeah, and
for what
we are
deal
going to
with.
we're addressing that. We've had several conversations already about how we're going to progress along with that one.
We are continuing to have discussions both with the assessor and the county attorney.
Okay, any questions? John?
Not a question, but just a comment that on Exhibit B on the bottom, it says, note, 14 of 16 light poles are to be located on, and it reads right now, on public infrastructure. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be public rights-of-way.
Yes, yes.
Okay. That's a good clarification on that. Commissioner Hamrick, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Ma'am?
I would just like to, if we could, hear from Ben about how this is going and just a little bit more about the project. Is that possible? It would
Yes,
be
please.
helpful. Thank you.
Front center.
Hello, everybody. It's proceeding as planned. I guess no project ever goes on time and under budget, right? So we are on track. for those of you who drive through that area, it's been, other than missing some buildings, hard to see. We finally are starting to see some walls come up. We've been fortunate that winter really hasn't arrived till the last couple days, and so they've had good dry weather to be able to do their work. I will say that I was thinking as I was driving down here, a perfect anecdotal example of the benefit of this investment it took place about a month ago. So some of you may have read, it was in the Daily Record, that we recently purchased another store in Salida, Colorado. And so now we have stores in Colorado Springs, Canyon City, and Salida. And at that point, we made a decision to hire a new general manager for this store in Canyon City. And prior to that, my brother was the general manager since we bought the store from our uncle in 2017. And a real factor in the decision and the ability for us to recruit a very talented individual was the prospect of what was to come with this business. He was the final candidate, ended up coming out of Colorado Springs, lives in Colorado Springs currently, has plans to relocate to Canyon City, and couldn't be more excited about this new facility. We wanted to bring somebody in now so they could see where we were coming from, right? Rather than just a walk into a brand new facility. So it's already having some benefit in our ability to recruit people, as I talked about in our meeting. And along those same lines, his focus has been, number one, recruiting some technicians and selling the story as to what's to come, right? Because that's where we have some real growth opportunity once this new larger shop exists. And we are seeing early progress there too. So the bricks and mortar are progressing, but just as importantly, the impact of that bricks and mortar is already kind of growing some buds that will hopefully turn into some trees.
Any questions for Ben? When's the new Ford Maverick pickup going to show up?
Come see me tomorrow.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this? Okay. Let me get back to the agenda here so I get this right. Entertain a motion on the redevelopment agreement with FB Auto Properties, Pharisee Ford.
Mr. Chair,
Sir?
I move that we approve the redevelopment agreement with the provision that the note at the bottom of page 16 is changed to read from infrastructure to public rights-of-way, and authorize the executive director to sign such agreement.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Dennehy?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Commissioner Hamrick?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Reeser?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmisher?
Aye.
Commissioner A. Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner B. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Payne.
Aye. Thank you very much. Good presentation. Thank you, Ben. Move on to item B, redevelopment agreement with TZAC Heavy Equipment Company, which commonly would be the old Fremont Bank building. Rick, I assume you're up on this one too?
Yes, I am. All right, thank you. Same story with TZAC. We've been working with Danny TZAC for about as long as we've been working with Ben Pharisee on this one. And I have to say, now that he's not here, unfortunately, but both of them are extremely intelligent people that care very much about the community and care very much about every little detail about making something right. And it's really reassuring to interact with both of them. This project started off as a very simple project of renovating a 1970s building on Main Street into an office building. The intent was to renovate the 70s building to turn it into the corporate offices for TZAC Heavy Equipment. While they were demolishing, or while they were looking, not demolishing yet, but while they were examining the building to demolish and figure out how they wanted to do it, literally stuck their head out of a window and found the original building. still there, intact. That changed the game entirely in this project. Our project is now a downtown historic revitalization project, resulting in a much more expensive cost of construction than originally anticipated, and verbiage is missing. Oh, which resulted in a significant call for TIF assistance. But just the prospect of redeveloping a historic building like that added amazing amount of money to the project. So what we're looking at is the original building up on the left, or up on top, I should say. Not the most attractive 1970s structure, but that was very, very, very common all over the country back then. And then today, at 1:30 this afternoon, this is what we're looking at this point. He's added on to the back of the building, added more office space onto the back, and when you see the eligible costs, you see 50-50 breakdown in some of those expenses. That's because that's kind of how it breaks down with the building as it's being developed. As I mentioned, it's now listed as a historical landmark, so he will benefit from the tax credits that come from that as well. He was very key on having that done. He wanted the historical nature. He wanted it listed as a historical landmark. That means a lot to him to have this opportunity, even though he didn't expect it from the beginning. And the benefits to Seacare: blight remediation on Main Street, stimulate additional commercial revitalization and business investment in the central business and downtown areas. Again, historic preservation downtown, and I should say that historic preservation is recognized by a lot of investors that want to move to an area. There's a lot of interest in historic preservation. And then upgrading and replacement aging public infrastructure on and adjacent to the site. This is the list of eligible expenses. You'll notice a number of them are 50-50, moisture and damp proofing, plumbing, electrical. He and I went back and forth a couple of times on these. He actually requested considerably higher reimbursement because his costs are considerably higher. The contingency that you see on the bottom, $300,000, is completely gone. It's in the red right now, and it's changing on a weekly basis, almost daily basis. He's finding out much more. Finding there's much more cost involved than he's being told from the week before. The other challenge is contractors won't guarantee they'll hold their price, and that's across the board too, and that just creates a whole lot of challenges. So we started off initially talking about $800,000 or so. Through negotiation, he requested considerably higher. He requested considerably longer term. And we brought it back down to $1,063,714, really based on the eligible expenses. And that lines up very, very, almost perfectly with Ricker Cunningham analysis of $1.1 million of gap and a 15-year reimbursement. We are going again we extended this one out a little bit longer. Chairman, you mentioned the uncertainty with the assessor. They have a history of not really assessing historical buildings all that well and knowing what goes into them. So there is a little bit of uncertainty there, so we're extending it out so they will never get a reimbursement over 1063, but we're going to extend it. We agreed to extend it out a few years just to help along the way in case the assessment comes in lower initially. And we are ready, if the assessment comes in lower, we're ready to go battle on behalf of TZAC to help them, help get the value up to what it should be. This is again the one that, I'm sorry, external obsolescence was the other one, but this one is again one that really increased the cost of the project, primarily because of COVID and because of the historical nature of it. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Any questions for Rick on this TZAC? John?
Yes, I do. On page 15, Exhibit B, the eligible improvements, about halfway down, a little bit more, there it says plumbing, C note 2, and below that, electrical, C note 1. And I did not see those notes in my packet.
And I don't have them on me. I don't think, hang on. No, I don't have that document with me.
Do you have some idea of what the subject of the notes were? Were they just general construction notes?
I
on-
believe they're just general construction notes, but I don't have the information right now.
Whatever the note says, we do have an amount there, and a requested amount or estimated cost and a qualifying expense. So that should be sufficient for our decision, I believe.
Yeah, nothing I'm seeing here has that answer.
Well, the key there is the qualifying expense. Right?
Yeah, the key as far as the
Yeah.
TIF reimbursement, yeah, it's eligible expense for urban renewal.
Qualifying expense, not a weekend in Vegas. So, yeah. So- Commissioner Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rick, talking about the assessment and the valuation of historic buildings, do you have an idea, or at least an anticipation of what the assessor may do with her assessment on the completed project, or is it just guesswork, or what? And if she comes in lower than what is wanted, what is the basis of the rationale for asking for a higher? I mean, you said,
The basis, the rationale for asking for higher is based on the value of the building projected out. Ricker Cunningham used factors that are based on values throughout around the state. So they come at it from an educated perspective. We're also waiting for a court order at the moment. Corey is waiting for that from another community in Colorado that's working with an assessor to see what the judge is going to say about evaluation of buildings in, I think it's Aurora. I'm not sure exactly where it is. I don't recall. But the basis for the calculation, and the calculations we used, were conservative calculations based on a value generated by the potential business afterward. In other words, what does this space cost to build? And what can they get for it if they were to lease it out, if they were to rent it out to themselves? And that's how we determine the gap. The cost to build is going to be one number, and what they can actually generate, what would be called the value, is another number. And that's all based on square footage estimates that are on averages.
so I'd be interested in what you mean by renting it out to themselves, because I could buy a building and rent it out to myself for 5 times the market, or a fifth of the market.
They take the square
and use that
footage.
as the argument with the assessor. That's not how valuation actually works, and
So
so.
with the assessor, the Colorado Revised Statute has the assessor's reference library, so I think the biggest argument is to make sure that the assessment is being done in accordance with the reference library.
Okay. The assessor's Bible. Okay.
It's still a little uncertain what that answer is going to be.
Yeah, and that's, I think, really what we have to be ready for, because, I mean, a consultant group like this can talk about historic properties around the state and valuing what it, on the basis of how it is, how you might lease it back to yourself. But the reality is, I can't think of a historic property in the state that you would get more lease value than the typical office building. And so I could be wrong, and they may have prime examples of that, but I worry that we're waiting for the shoe to drop from the assessor, and it's too low, and this ought to be an odd one for the Board of Appeals. When the applicant comes in wanting it to be higher, that'll be a first.
There will be a first, and that's what's, one thing that's rather unusual about urban renewals is that the developer wants a high valuation. And if the valuation's not there, the TIF isn't generated, they don't get the reimbursement that they hope to get. And that's where it's, that's where there's no risk on the part of the urban renewal. And I'm sure Corey would say that too, is if there's no TIF generated, there's no TIF reimbursed. And that's the big question. But we will be meeting, and we continue conversations about this. We'll be meeting with the assessor's office to come to grips with how this is all going to play out.
Okay, thank you.
But I went to an urban renewal conference a couple of months ago, and this was a huge topic there. So it's a big one.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, entertain a motion for the redevelopment agreement with TZAC Heavy Equipment Company.
Mr. Commissioner, I'd like to make a motion to approve and authorize the executive director to sign and enter into a redevelopment agreement with TZAC Heavy Equipment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Roll call, please.
May I ask a quick question? Since this is with the Resolution 3, do they have to say that part of it?
No,
for
this
the-
is a different action. Resolution 3 is for our policy manual.
Yeah,
That's
this is
the
a
next-
separate agreement.
That's the next subject.
Thank you.
We try to throw curveballs at you when we can.
Occasionally.
Yeah.
Commissioner Dennehy,
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamrick,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Reeser,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmisher,
Aye.
Commissioner A. Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner B. Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Payne.
Aye. Now we'll move on to item C, introduction and adoption by title only of Resolution 3, Series 2021, entitled, "A Resolution for the Canyon City Area Reinvestment Expansion Approving the Canyon City Area for Reinvestment Expansion Policy for Evaluating Urban Renewal Activities." Rick or Ryan, which one are you guys?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start with this one.
Okay.
So that, we had a work session several months ago to go through, the evaluation process and setting that policy. So this is the resolution to approve that policy as it was discussed during the work session. I know the last time we had brought this up for discussion, Commissioner Schmisher had asked for some additional information regarding the plan, the work plan being included in this. We did not end up actually putting the work plan, those bullet points in here because as a policy document, we're trying to keep it to one page, and we thought that the better place to do that was on the website where this policy document's going to live, and put those bullet points there as an education piece for when people go to download it.
Okay, any other questions on this or comments? Like Ryan said, we had a work session on this, talked about this quite a bit. I entertain a motion to approve Resolution 3.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve Resolution Number 3, Series of 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Dennehy?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Commissioner Hamrick?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Reeser?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmisher?
Aye.
Commissioner A. Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner B. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Payne.
Aye. I'm moving on to item D. I jumped the gun there on that budget. Different organizations do it differently.
So Chairman Payne, since you have already voted on this, if you are good with that vote, I believe we can go ahead and move forward.
I am, we didn't really include the resolution 4, but our motion still is to approve the budget, so we're still good? Okay.
I think you're fine.
That was going to be my question. We didn't really, but.
We
that
didn't
was-
catch you. You're too fast.
Okay. All right. Do we have anything else before this board? I took out a couple things. Special districts, I got 2 of them that'll want updates. I'll give them the updates on the Pharisee and the TZAC in the next 2 months, so that's what I'll be doing. With that, no further business coming before this board. We are adjourned.